Track 1 is Head Turner, and this is the song that I call the Misfit song because I've been trying to find a home for it since 2011 when I first wrote it as a soul ballad for my Resistance EP. The producers Ian Flynn and Tom McDonald felt that it wasn't a fit with the other tracks, and so I dropped it, and I didn't think about it again until 2022 when I was working on Severance with my producer Gareth Shortland, who ended up being the producer of the track in the end. So I'll never forget singing the song down the phone to Gareth, and the 3 words that he used sent chills to the bone. He said, "Ollie Moore's vibes," and I quickly retracted the song because, no offense to Ollie, but that was absolutely not the vibes I was going for. So, cut to 2 years later, we're putting together the songs for Swimming Against the Tide, and I felt I wanted a disco track, a sort of new disco track that was like Jessie Ware meets Jamiroquai. And I kind of thought, this needs to be a big dramatic opener with strings and with synths and with the swagger of Roxy music, but you know, the undercurrent of, like, do you remember Lola's team back in the early noughties? That sort of thing. And I feel like, as they say today, he understood the assignment. We never spoke about the fact that the song had previously been rejected from my Severance EP by Gareth, who was, you know, the producer in the end. We never to this day acknowledged it, and I'm not even sure if he realises that it's the same song, but I feel like he nailed it. And it wasn't supposed to be a single actually, because Something Strange, my other song, which is track 3 on this record, was supposed to be the lead single, but because I delayed the album, not that I had ever announced it, but I delayed it from sort of October, November last year, when it would have come out after Something Strange, to coming out in January, and I needed another big track to give it the push. So, but I'm glad it's having its moment after all those times of being turned down. Track 2 is Summer Is Waiting, and this was the first single to be released from Swimming Against the Tide. It was released in isolation to all the other tracks back in May 2023, and I had only written and recorded this song about 3 weeks before it was actually released. I wrote it after having 2 conversations within like less than 2 days with 2 different friends of mine, and they were both feeling a bit lost at sea and just under the weather for various reasons that I won't divulge. And I put it straight into a song. I wrote it as like what I wanted to say to them, and that's that, like, you're gonna feel better soon, summer's around the corner, we're all just in a bit of a winter slump, you know, because when people can't put their finger on what's wrong with them, maybe it's external factors like lack of sunlight in Ireland. So it's my kind of anti-depression anthem, and it gives me, it's very effervescent and it's very light and airy is how I would describe it. It's the first track that I have recorded that kind of pays tribute to the chill out genre that I have always loved. So when I say chill out, I mean think about the likes of the Café Del Mar days in Ibiza, and acts like Röyksopp and Chicane is a big influence here. And it was that simple. I recorded the vocals in Dublin with my friend Julio, who I've recorded a couple of tracks with before, and who has also shot some of my videos. He's a jack of all trades for sure. He's shot photos for me, so many different creative skills this guy has. So it was a really nice start to making the album, because I feel like after Severance, which was kind of wall-to-wall bangers, the trance, the Scandi pop, it took a bit of a step back. It's more relaxed, more laid-back approach, and I won't say it set the tone for the album, because the album is a bit of a pick and mix, but it definitely made me realise, oh, I can make chiller tracks, and they sound good. First time I heard this, actually, I didn't like it. When I heard the first, it was mixed, and Gareth played it for me. He sent me the file. I remember I was coming home from a job, and I was like, it's a bit lifeless. And then I listened to it a couple more tracks, and a couple more times, and every time I listened to it, I preferred it. And I think that means it's a grower. All right, we're moving on to something strange. This is track 3. I first wrote the chorus of this song, the first couple of lines of the chorus. I remember exactly where I was. I was on holiday in Barcelona. I was sitting on a rooftop pool, in a rooftop pool in the Mim Hotel, which Messi owns. And I felt this wave of contentment, and I just felt, you know, when you go on holiday after a few days and you switch off and everything's a million miles away. That's the way I felt. But also I felt, in terms of my relationship and where I was in my life in general, you know, here I was in the creative process at that point for a year making this album. I had just got a new day job, which I loved. It was a happy accident, definitely. And then my relationship was in a great place. So this song is a contentment anthem, and it makes me feel good whenever I hear it, and I hope that you feel the same. I think that there is something more to happen for this song. It was released back in October as a single, and I quickly, over the next couple of weeks, released an extended mix which really goes off and allows the song to breathe and expand. And I released an acoustic version which totally strips it down. I had heard Steve Anderson and what he had done for pop acts like Steps and like Kylie on their acoustic versions, and I thought, wow, you can make these pop songs sound so exposed and vulnerable when you take everything away from them. So that's what I did. And if you like what you hear in the background, I strongly recommend you listen to not just the album version but also the other versions as well. The fourth version, which is on my Night Tides, the Chiller collection we'll get to later, is kind of inspired by, I went to see Coldplay in Croke Park here in Dublin last summer, and you know the way their songs just go off live and they just feel so anthemic and huge. I wanted to create something that felt like that felt like a spiritual experience almost. You know, when you're in the crowd and you look around and everyone's singing, and you know, that's Something Strange line and the Something Changed line. It's just really like powerful, I think. At least I hope it is. And it's one of the songs that I'm most proud of. And in the last week or so, I have signed with a company called GOM, General Overseas Music, who's been pitching my music to for licensing around the world. And this is the song that everyone seems to be latching onto. So let's hope it works its magic, and maybe this summer it can reach a whole bunch of new people. I'm going to move on. This is Mysterious Times. A lot of people will know this song from the late 90s. It was originally by a dance act called Sash and a singer called Tina Cousins. They did an amazing version, and I have always loved it. I mean, I was a collector of all those Now records in the 90s, all the dance compilations and the pop compilations. And I had thought about Sash when we recorded a couple of the songs on Severance, the previous EP, which was out in 2022. But I didn't want to do a cover. I wanted to make original songs that kind of used Sash and a couple of other acts like that as a template. So when we came around to recording this album, Swimming Against the Tide, I thought, you know what? I actually was in the car one day and I heard this come on the radio, and I thought, that's a sign. I took it as a sign. I wanted it to be a sign. So I then went to, what was not the big reunion, the biggest 90s disco concert, and I heard it again during like one of the, I think Sash was actually there, and I thought, I have to record this. So literally days later I went into the studio and I recorded it. So we had it, and I think I recorded it at the end of a session to sort of try it out, and we just used that. That's the final version you hear. Like, basically recorded this vocal 2-3 times maybe, singing it all the way through, a couple of little ad-libs and whatever, but it's probably one of the quickest songs I've ever recorded. Some of the things that we changed from the original was we wanted to make it slightly more dark and hollow, and I think part of the reason for that was I didn't feel like I could improve on the original, and so I wanted to bring something slightly different but keep the energy of the original. And also because I think the lyrics are quite dark. If you think about the last few years, like the COVID years and a lot of what we've been through over the last few years, they have been mysterious times, and maybe this would have been great to have out then, but timing is everything, right? But I'm really happy with this, and actually on the Chill Out album there is a ballad version of this song, which goes down a slightly more Coldplay, like early Coldplay vibe. It's really okay, sorry, there's a comment here, I'm going to come back to that in a second. It's very laid back and almost like meditative, if that makes sense, but we'll talk about the Chill Out album separately. We're on to Hard Rain after that little detour. This song is the first time I've ever accepted a song from another writer that wasn't a cover, if that makes sense. A guy called T Webb, who collaborates with my producer Gareth Shortland, and who is a songwriter in his own right and an artist in his own right, sent me a different song before this that I really liked, and then I lost it because I think I either didn't respond quick enough or he decided to release it himself, or something went wrong. This would have been back in 2022, just after Severance was released. So I think he heard One Way Ticket and Severance, and he liked what I was doing, and he felt that the type of songs he wrote would be a fit. And so I think I said to him, like, what else have you got? And so he sent me this across, and I liked it. It reminded me of Erasure and a little bit of the Pet Shop Boys, who I'm a big fan of. And lyrically, it felt like something that I would write myself. But the real reason for wanting to include this was because I wanted to have variety across the album. So it's one thing when you have an EP and you write all 5 tracks yourself, but it's another thing to have a 10-track album and you want it to be all killer, no filler, right? And that's what I wanted. I'm big on quality control, and I wanted for it to be really solid, and that means that it doesn't all necessarily need to come from me. So you get 2 covers, you get 6 songs written from me, and you get in the end 2 songs written from others. So there's this version of it, and then there is a darker, more EDM version of it on the Chill Out collection. And I have just hooked up with a guy called Sakra, who has done some remixes for me before and who's very popular on another video platform that I won't mention in case I'm always skeptical that it might mess up my algorithm or something, but he's very popular online, and his remixes are directly influenced by PWL. So those of you who are my age and older will remember PWL, Pete Waterman, and Stockake and Waterman saw from the 80s, and that's what his mixes are inspired by. So if you guys would like to hear more of this song, you can hear it. It's track 5 on Swimming Against the Tide, and the remix, the Chill Out version, is on the Chill Out collection called Night Tides. And if you'd like to hear more, let me know and maybe I'll drop the other remix. I'm going to move on to one of my favourite tracks on the album by a long shot, and also the most streamed song that I've ever released on Spotify, and this one is called Everything You Wanted. I was in the middle of a home renovation when I wrote this song, which sounds really random, but I was every day meeting all these different people, right, different tradesmen, and we'd have all these chats, and at the same time in the evenings I was working sometimes at events, right, because I was trying to get money together for this album. So I was meeting 2 very contrasting types of people, like hustle, hard workers with real skill, and then also influencers and people who were filming their lives. And I stood back and watched at these events people kind of trying to look like they were having the best time ever and filming it. And then having these conversations with builders and tradesmen in the day where they would talk about very simple goals and putting their heads down and getting it done and making a lot of money, you know, for their families. And I just felt like the whole thing was really admirable. And that night I went to sleep after a very long day, and I had in my AirPods, I don't always go to sleep with music, but sometimes I do, and I find it inspires me. And I was listening to a German band, and I don't remember who it was, but I was listening to German electropop. And I woke up at 5 a.m. and I can't remember what was playing, but I couldn't even understand the words because it was German. And so I had the chorus idea, and I just wrote it down in my iPhone, and in a note I just typed it all out, and then the verses. And I felt like this was a long lost 80s song. It didn't even feel like a new song. It felt to me like something that was from years ago, and I was like, did I hear something like while I was sleeping? What inspired me? I don't know what it was to this day, but I do think it sounds like an authentic 80s song, and lyrically it touches different territory than where I've gone before. I cannot believe all these people joining. Thanks, guys. I have one new message. Forgive me for how slow I am with this, because it's my first time ever going live on TikTok. But if you're just joining me, I'm going track by track behind the song on my new album Swimming Against the Tide, which is out now. So I'm Robert O'Connor. I'm a electronic pop music artist, and I've just released 2 albums, one Swimming Against the Tide and the other a chill out collection called Night Tides, which features songs from the album in chill out form. Next track. Some of you who were born in the 80s maybe will remember this song, or who were raised in the 80s, and maybe you heard your parents' records later on, but this is a song called Trick of the Night, which is by a band called Bananarama, who are a huge girl band in the 80s, and who continue today releasing music, and who continue to play live. And it was at their concert at the Palladium last year, so I was a late discoverer of this song. I didn't hear it until I think it was April last year. I was at the Palladium in London watching Bananarama perform live. They played all the bangers, all the hits, loved every minute of it. But then I heard this song, like a rare ballad in their catalogue, and I was like, what is that? And at the end of it, the guy that I was with at the show said to me, what was that song? Like, what? My favourite song, he said, was that ballad, and neither of us knew it from previous. So I said, that's crazy, because that was a moment I really, really enjoyed as well. It was like the highlight of a spectacular show, by the way. And I heard it in my head, and I heard my voice singing it, which sounds incredibly egotistical, but I just knew as soon as I heard it that I was looking for a ballad for this album, because for whatever reason these days I don't really write ballads. I write a lot of up-tempo songs, and I had made a few attempts, and I thought, I don't want just a ballad for the sake of it. I want a ballad that sounds like a classic ballad, you know what I mean? And then when I read the meaning of the song was about so it wasn't written by Bananarama. It was written by a team called Jolie and Swain, who were apparently very famous in the 80s for these tracks that they created for pop acts. And the song is about a guy who moves to the city and has fallen on hard luck, on hard times, and it's not going as he expects, and he's forced with the decision to become a rent boy to make money. And I thought, this is crazy, because I wouldn't have thought this listening to Bananarama singing it. It's quite veiled. So I liked it for that reason, because it's mysterious and not too obvious. So I recorded it with... Who did I record this one? I recorded this one with Richie McCourt. So most of the songs I did the vocals in a studio in Dublin with Julio, who I spoke about earlier. And then towards the end, there were a few songs where I wasn't feeling super confident about. I was like, I think I need a little bit of coaching with these ones, and I was thinking about like my process with Richie McCourt, who recorded 4 out of 5 songs on Severance, my previous EP. So I called up Richie and I said to him, I'm like 3/4 of the way through an album, but I feel like I need your magic touch here. And so Trick of the Night was, I think it was the first song we did together. And he was aware of the original. I already had the fully produced track from Gareth Shortland. So literally with Richie I just did the vocals, but you know what, it's always so much more when you get a great vocal producer and you have a nice relationship with them, they bring out the best in you. And so we laid this down, and I think we did, what else did we do on that day? I think it was What a Time to Be Alive, which is the closing song on the album. The fade out on this track was really important to me because I wanted it to be an accurate representation of how songs were in the 80s. So there's a really slow fade out. It's also over 4 minutes long, which is not very 2025 of me, but there you go. The next song is called Once in a While, and this was the second of 2 songs that were given to me by other writers, and this one was given to me by a guy called Gordon Pagoda, who had written for my experience of him was he had written a song called Beautiful Battlefield for Steps on their Tears on the Dance Floor Deluxe album, and then I had heard a couple of other tracks that he had in shows like crazy, like shows like Sex and the City, shows like all of these big HBO shows. And so he approached me with this track through, he didn't approach me directly, he came through a guy that had done remixes for me called Sakra, who we've spoken about earlier. And I was like, this is a real sugary rush of a pop song, and it reminded me of Ace of Base and a lot of those like mid-90s just really like carefree pop acts, you know. And I thought, okay, I think I can pull this off. But when I did it, Gareth was not particularly fond of it, and we questioned for a while if it was going to be on the album. So there's a Sakra version which was released as a bonus track on the Everything You Wanted single, and it ended up doing quite well on Spotify without any promo. It just people seemed to just really bond with it, and I thought, you know what, let's have a Gareth Shortland produced version on the album, because he had produced the whole rest of the record and I didn't want one track to stick out sonically. So it's 2 versions, like a lot of my tracks, but this one lyrically, it's not probably something I would write lyrically. I'm not going to say it's sappier, but it's not the angle I would normally take on like a sort of breakup song, but it's for that reason that I did work with other people, so that we would get like a broader perspective on things. So I've definitely enjoyed collaborating with different writers and you know, widening the scope on my sound, and it's something I would like to do again. And so if you're a songwriter out there and you have something that you think is, you know, electro pop or synth pop or dance pop or anything pop really, and you think that it would suit me, I am open to your approaches. Love Remains is track 9 on Swimming Against the Tide, my new album, and this one is very dramatic, and I think that this was the first song that I wrote for the album, and originally I went to Gareth with this in January 2023, just as we decided to do an album. And I remember saying, I think I've got the opening song for the album. It starts off like a ballad, and it has that sort of late 90s, early 90s fake ballad thing, when it explodes then after 50 seconds into a pop dance track. Listen, and gradually builds up. So the inspiration behind this was There was a production team called Top and Twig, and sadly Carl Twig passed away last week, so this has kind of become a tribute to him, which I didn't expect. But he wrote some incredible songs over the years in the 90s, like One for Sorrow and Deeper Shade of Blue for Steps, and so many others for the likes of Westlife, and just like moments of pop genius. And I wanted to create, and this kind of crosses a few borders, because I also feel like there's a very distinctive 80s sound to it, even though it was inspired by the late 90s. Like, vocally, the delivery is quite Pet Shop Boys, melodically even, and structurally it's much more a straight pop record than some of the other stuff on the album. And maybe that's where I was coming from straight after Severance. I think up until this year, my most popular song was One Way Ticket, which is a very fizzy pop anthem. And I wanted to give my listeners one more of those, even though I think it's dangerous to try and repeat tricks that have been successful in the past. I wanted to give them more of what they had shown they loved the last time around. So that's what this is about. I love this breakdown right here. Hopefully TikTok aren't going to remove it for posting my own music, as they sometimes do. I mean, that is as late 90s as you can get, I think, that little breakdown before that dramatic mid-8. And we have something else coming up, which is just adds to the high drama of all of this, and that is a key change. Here it's coming. It's the only key change on the album. I would say this is the most nostalgic song on the album in some ways. The reason it ended up not being track 1 is because I felt it wasn't fully representative of the album as a whole, and that it's more of just a moment in itself. Right, we're on track 10, the last track of my album, Swimming Against the Tide. I am Robert O'Connor, an Irish electronic pop artist, for those of you who are joining me again. What a Time to Be Alive is track 10 on the album, and it feels very conclusive. I was telling you guys that I wrote it after I read the words "What a Time to Be Alive" on a YouTube video. Someone left a comment like, "Wow, what a time to be alive." And I thought, when was the last time that I thought that? And I feel like life has changed so much, right? With technology and with everything that we've all been through in our own lives, and that we've all been through mutually, over the last few years. And this song is the ultimate nostalgia anthem in a way, because it's like about going back. For me, in this, it's 1995. Is that because that was the best time, or is it because it's a time when I have positive memories, but it's also because 1995 rhymes with What a Time to Be Alive, and I am a songwriter of convenience. But I was very stream of consciousness with the lyrics here, so I wrote them. I have this thing for some reason when I've been in the studio that day, and when I'm in a period of being in the studio and I'm under pressure, that I write very directly, very honestly, very quickly, and that I can go weeks or even months without doing that again. So this, I just wrote 2 verses and a chorus, and then I sort of let it rest for a while. And I normally just write everything and then I'm done. I don't write anymore. But with this song, I think because I was making the sort of Nashville country oriented stuff at the time, and I wasn't really in the dreamy pop place, I just forgot about it. I put it away, I forgot about it. I thought maybe I'll come back to it at some point. And then I went to meet a friend who I hadn't seen in years, and that inspired this next verse. So I want you to listen to the lyrics of this for a second, right? I miss the friends that I haven't seen. Self-explanatory. When I see them, it's not the same. No, it's not the same. 'Cause maybe you've changed, or maybe it's me. You got a wife and a family. Right. So we're all changing and developing at different rates, at different times, going in different directions, right? So I meet these friends that I haven't seen in years, and I feel like I'm still the same, and maybe they feel that I'm not, because we all have different perceptions, right? But I felt like they had changed, and like the connection, the spark had gone, and I was like, God, I really want to get that back, because it was magical when we had it, and it was just gone. And so I thought, that's the third verse. The third verse has to be about the friendships that falter and that we lose, and that sometimes we still have, but they're not the same, and we're clinging on because of the time spent in the past, and we feel invested in them. Um, you know, and it's such a rough thing letting go of all this stuff in the past that we can't go back to. And it reminds me of these TikTok videos where they show all this nostalgic stuff from the 80s and the 90s. I particularly saw a lot of them over Christmas last year, and I thought, you know what, this song is that moment. It's like where you watch old footage, or you go back in your mind of these memories, and you think, wow, they exist only as memories. I can never feel that way again. I can never, see that person again, or if I do, it won't even be the same. So at the very end, there's this warped sound, and it's like I described this to Gareth, like I wanted it to sound like almost like a tape recorder was like slowing down and winding out. And yeah, we got a little bit of that. So I think for a nostalgic pop album that revisits the noughties and the 90s and the 80s in various ways, and it feels like chapters musically for me in my life, What a Time to Be Alive was the perfect way to finish. It's the ultimate nostalgia song, and I hope you go listen to it, as well as the other 9 tracks on the album. It is, I want to see how long this is. It's a 37-minute album, so it's short, it's tight, it's concise, but it is all killer, no filler, I want to say. And it's called Swimming Against the Tide, and my name is Robert O'Connor. So drop me a follow on here, head on over to Spotify. You should be able to get there through the link in the bio, but otherwise you just type my name in there. It's Robert O'Connor, and there's lots more music where that came from. If you like Swimming Against the Tide, let me know if you like this content and if you'd like to see any more of it. I'm not even sure if I can save this, because this is my first time ever going live, but let's see. I'm gonna give it a go, and if you like it, I will do it again. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate it. Have a great day.